Welcome to Raw Automation Talk. I'm here with Johnny Jones. I'm Brant Wiederholt, and we're here with Tony George. So George, I was just going through some of your LinkedIn profile here. Let me go back up to it. So you're there in Kansas City, Wichita. This is your hometown, correct?
Mm-hmm. Wichita, Kansas, not Kansas City. That's 3 hours away.
Yep.
Yeah, all good.
So how'd you get started with some of this automation, or how'd you get started? I mean, go backwards. How did you come from MES and ERP, which is fairly high up? How'd you get here?
Well, I ended up on MES ERP integrations because I took on a client that needed that essentially. So, okay. And they didn't want to pay for the full MES because the full MES was for them a $400,000 package, and they wanted some sort of functionality. I don't have to name the brand when I name that price, but anyways, but they wanted some sort of functionality, MES-like functionality. So I essentially just started building out functionality of the MES in their IoT platform that they selected.
Gotcha. By any chance, I mean, maybe I have it or not, I can't remember, but is it? I mean, when you started doing research for some of your MES, what was there a product that you had looked at? I'm just kind of curious.
No,
okay.
They had evaluated their own products and decided that they weren't going to purchase any of them. So they're on paper. So they were on a paper time cards, paper inventory. So they wanted to know what I could give them with what they had.
Gotcha. And so did you were just any Excel sheets, or was it just paper, or did they have any whiteboards?
Yeah, they have Excel sheets, they have whiteboards, they have that. So, I think most places, everybody has Excel. You can't really get away from Excel, but we were able to bring some of the functionality out of Excel. Now they still use it quite a bit, but and it's probably going to always be there. I think everybody agrees that that's going to be around for a while, but,
Now, were they on the OE, were they focused on just parts in and out, or were they doing quality as well, or were they doing any kind of like reason codes why they were down, or is it just like notes on the side of like why they were down or why the OE number was low?
Yeah, it was paper done. If you had a problem with your machine, you went and got the mechanic, and the mechanic came out and fixed the machine. They had no tracking of why it was down. Obviously, the supervisor had awareness of that, and he could make decisions based on that. But if the supervisor wasn't there or something was missed, and in this particular environment, there was also a language barrier there. So getting sometimes the reason codes out of the operators is not always the easiest.
Right. So somebody would actually put it on paper. Was the operator kind of involved with this process, or was it just mostly a supervisor's responsibility, and the supervisor took responsible, or were they the ones who were responsible of the spreadsheet?
The operator would do everything on paper. So the operator is only paper. They would write down their parts count at the end of the shift, and they would give it to the supervisor. And the supervisor was the one responsible for inputting it into essentially the ERP. They had Int4, so input it into their ERP.
So if I was an operator, I would write down whatever numbers I wanted.
Mm-hmm. And I think that they're about to find out which operator is writing down whatever number they want. Now, I'm not pointing out anybody. I'm just handing over information. But so the operators are able to write down whatever they want. They're also responsible for doing their own quality assurance, making sure that the parts coming out of the machines are good. They'll run for 8 hours at a time, and you would find an entire 8-hour shift of bad parts. Obviously, that person would be let go at that point, or whatever that would happen. But you have 8 hours worth of bad parts coming out of the machine. So you were able to write down however many you did, however many that were bad. So you did your own OEE calculations.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that the operator had to fill this out before he could leave for the day? So it was one of those things where it's like he wouldn't fill it out like every hour or every 15 minutes. He would probably just write it at the last, few minutes that he was there at his 8-hour shift.
He would do it at the end of every job or work order. So
okay.
At the end of every work order, he'd close it out. And their work orders would be sometimes a roll of steel, if it's a roll feed press or something, or it would be a bin, or it would be a number, but usually not a number. Usually it's a certain amount of steel that they'll roll through it, and then they'll count how many parts they got from that steel, and then enter that into the ERP.
Okay, so it's potential. I mean, I'm just trying to find the fault in it, and it's not a pretty system, but I can see to where it's like if it was me and it was a Monday morning and I wasn't all that woken up yet, and some kind of issue happened in the beginning of the shift, and I forgot about it when I was writing the paperwork. So that's where there's a
capturing the maintenance codes and stuff. No, they didn't capture any sort of maintenance codes or anything like that, or even what tool went on what press. It's you're running a job, and then I mean, they have identical presses in a few places and identical tooling to go on those things, and so sometimes they would have different tools on different presses, and undoubtedly those perform different. Who installs the tooling makes them perform different. The operator on the machine makes them perform different. So they weren't capturing any of that. They weren't able to. They're shutting down 2 weeks a year to count inventory on all their stuff by weighing bins of stuff, and so that's 2 weeks of shutdown they have every year. They are off by 15% on inventory, and this is a company that's north of $300 million a year. So
right, very significant. Yeah,
and it's not uncommon from what I've seen. It's not uncommon.
right,
They're doing their best.
right. Okay, and then are there any machines that the operators don't really kind of mess with all the time, and then therefore they just kind of get they're back and nobody looks at them or that kind of stuff? Or is there an operator per machine, or how does that work?
Most machines have an operator per machine. There are a few machines that can have one operator. You can start them in the roll feed ones and stuff sometimes, but they also don't really have the ability to handle the product coming out of the end, so they hand stack a lot. We only recently got our first robot in there, which is massively, the ROI on that was under 8 months. And so, which is driving more and more investment in that area. So it's kind of the idea is that we take the savings that we get from the project before and we roll it into the next one. And so far, everybody seems to be pretty happy with that.
So what about any issues with the plant having like personnel that was like, especially during COVID and, some of these plants that we've been to, they cycle through a lot of employees quite a bit. So is there a lot of turnover over at that company? Did you notice?
Yeah, so our first thing, so our proof of, so we do a proof of concept and a proof of value. So our proof of concept was one machine, a machine press, and then our proof of value was a group of them, so I could show the group OEEs. In that area, the operators seem to be pretty skilled, and there's not really a lot of turnover, but there is a lot of variation in skill between them. So as I start to look at the numbers, you can definitely see that some operators significantly outperform other operators. But I will say what we're looking at next is there's a lot of manual work where air conditioners go in a line around it and everybody's manually working on it. And yeah, so they'll have a line down usually every day because a certain number of people called in sick. So now they have to schedule where everybody goes on those days. Like we just had a snowstorm here. They only had half their lines running. Imagine half of your people coming in and finding out, oh, this person can't braze. This person can't do, shrouds. So like just having to do that. So
yeah. So you've got this employee, you got these machines, and then you got at the end of the 8-hour shift, they're given these sheets to the supervisor. Maybe he hands that off to some secretary that adds it to the Excel sheet, or they here you have a supervisor, a plant supervisor actually adding these to an Excel sheet.
right.
So, and then once it's on the Excel sheet, do you know if anybody is sharing that Excel sheet? Is there who gets control or who gets access to the sheet? Is this only a supervisor thing, or is it employee, or like are there any operators that can see some of the data?
Okay, so fortunately they're efficient enough to not have a supervisor entering the information in Excel spreadsheets.
Which is a big deal.
They are using an intern, so they're using a manufacturing engineer intern. And it's a great job for an intern, to be honest with you. So, but it's a terrible job that shouldn't have to be done by anybody. What do they do with it? They take it and they make it into a picture of some sort, and then they put it on a thumb drive, and then they display that information on the line to show the OE of the prior day or the prior week.
Wow,
so it's not
okay.
real time, but we are in the press shop. We're at real time. You can see there's dashboards and there's graphing and stuff in the press shop. But that we already have our proof of value, so they're already there. But as far as the rest of the plant goes, no, it's very manual. It's a manually papered and manually into the Excel spreadsheet, and then manually from the Excel spreadsheet onto some. It's a GIF or something, not a GIF. It's whatever. It's meme. They make a meme and put it on the thing. No, but it's just a picture that they put up that shows the efficiency of the prior day.
Yeah. All right. So walk me through this. You visit the plant. This is what you see. Where did you go from there? So that you obviously saw an issue, or did they scream at, did they request some of your services? Tell me how that went.
Well, they were having a problem counting parts coming out of the machine press. So okay. I told them that it's something I'd love to look at. So I put a box on there that basically I took a metal sensor, a proximity sensor, and then that detects metal, put it on the cam that spins on the machine press, so I didn't have to tie anything on it. And then, so when it cycles one, it counts it. And then I built, I used a time series database to do that. So I counted strikes like that. And I stored it locally on the box. I dashboarded it locally. And then I put it on the network so that they could look at it via browser, and they like that solution, and then they wanted to do the whole press shop. So from there, that's when I built out the actual proper infrastructure. So up to, I don't have a data broker in there yet, but that's what's going in next week. So they'll have the proper infrastructure to do this instead of just standalone projects. We want to build an infrastructure to make these projects easy. We don't want to keep doing individual projects that stand alone.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's the first, the pilot project, and it is kind of funny to watch a pilot project turn into like, oh, let's just scale this pilot project out. And it's like, well, hold on, wait a second. Infrastructure needs to go in and that kind of stuff. So it doesn't scale yet. That kind of stuff. Interesting. So what was your solution, I guess, for the pilot? Your first pilot project was it Raspberry Pi then?
Yeah, so it was a Raspberry Pi, and then
Okay.
initially I had it on relays. So
Okay.
and then I had I used a sensor, I tied it to the Raspberry Pi, and then I grabbed some relays to grab some information from the machine. So oh no, I used the relays for push buttons for the operators to let me know the status of the machine, because
Okay.
I couldn't find a 5-volt push button, so I had to use these 120-volt push buttons. It's the craziest problem, but we got through it. Dual voltage panel just for push buttons. So we got there, put some relays in there, and then I moved on to an HMI. So I replaced those with the HMI, so I could essentially to overcome the language problem.
Perfect. Okay. So, okay. So because Spanish, correct?
Yeah, Spanish speaking.
Okay. All right. So what about reason codes? Why did it go down? Any machine states or whatever the case is? Was it an operator? Was it material? Was it did you work on anything like that, or were you just focusing only on the performance of it?
So no, we do capture reason codes. Initially,
Okay.
it was just scheduled or unscheduled maintenance.
Okay.
But I'll say the reason codes is a difficult thing to overcome, because the operators will either put the easiest thing to select, the first thing that's available, or they won't put anything on. They'll put the same thing, and one operator's reason for it being down is different than another operator's reason for having it down. They'll shift blame, but yeah, so there is reason codes in there, but I don't trust them. And also I still don't even trust, like, because the operators are the ones that need to let me know if a part is bad. So if a part's a reject, they need to visually inspect it and then hit the red button on the push buttons. Now it's a HMI. Let me know that part's bad. Still, I'm moving on. We're moving on to a vision system now. So next up is I'm putting the vision system on, and I'm going to count the parts with the vision system and inspect the parts with the vision system. So my goal is to not make it harder on anybody else, to make the operator completely transparent to the operators, because I want clean data. That's what's most important to me. And the operators, even me, if I was an operator, I would put bad data in there, because I would count wrong, I would forget, I would be lazy. I'm not faulting them. I'm just, I want good data, because my goal is to scale this so that we can use AI to drive decisions. And if your data is not right, it's not going to be able to help you in that way.
Right. Okay, so let's go talk about the HMI, because this I know me and Johnny have kind of talked about this. Most of the times we come across a machine. The machine will already have like a random generic HMI. It could be Redline, it could be Maple Systems, it could be Johnny, help me out. There's Proface. Anyway,
Snyder,
so
Allen Bradley.
and we haven't even gotten into like what version they are, and we haven't even gotten into what screen size those are. So there's like lots of issues with adding OEE or anything like onto those HMIs, mainly because each machine you would spend a lot of time learning each system and then having to build quite a bit into those. So I've always kind of felt that we've had to add a HMI or another station to that line per se, just to capture some of that data without touching the OEM's machine. So what was your solution, I guess, on the HMI side for this?
Well, I use Next Gen, which is a brand of HMI, just a generic brand. It takes its own version of C, some sort of embedded C. It's durable. It's got good clarity on the screen. It's responsive to touch. It's about $100 for a nice, good sized screen. It's not incredibly easy to work with, to be honest with you, unless you're into C. I have a degree in computer programming, and I still don't like working with it, but it runs C. And then I pass the variables back and forth to the Raspberry Pi. I can use Arduino microcontrollers or PLCs too to do that stuff, because that HMI runs its code right on it. But what I'm doing now, what I'm finding is easier for this particular customer, because the idea here is that I don't stay forever. I'm always doing this. I'm teaching them how to do this so that I can back out of the company and then move on to more of the higher things. So the idea is I come in there and I help you, I consult, but you need to have buy-in. I'm not rolling in there with 20 people to do this. You need to provide somebody from IT and OT, and we need to all sit in a room and talk about it. But I'm moving to just regular Raspberry Pi computer screens, and then it's much easier to program. Like think about ignition, like running ignition modules that you can have, HMIs running on a computer screen like that. I mean, you can run them on, mobile HMIs, you can run on tablets, all that stuff. So I just prefer to use a computer screen because it's easier. If you don't need the responsiveness of an HMI, you can get away with a computer screen. Or the reliability. HMI's got a little higher reliability than a Raspberry Pi connected to a computer screen. So not the solution for nuclear or petrochemical probably, but you make RV air conditioners, you're all right there.
Yeah. Okay, so you were able to on like a pilot project, start with a Raspberry Pi, started with that HMI, and then how did they go to the touchscreen for or any type of how did they input some of the reason codes?
So via the HMI. So the
Okay,
HMI would have selections and like a few buttons for them to hit, and sub screens and stuff, and walk them through what they want to pick.
okay, and then they were able to see some of the kind of the production numbers. I guess they were seeing real time.
Yeah, so they get count real time on the HMI.
Nice. Okay. And then did you ever get the chance to, I mean, so what about like display wise? Was there any kind of plant wide area that would showcase real time, information for the supervisors, or did the supervisors have to walk by each site, each machine?
No, so above the machine press cell, there's a real time OEE dashboard that
Okay.
is built in Grafana.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And you previously said something about, I mean, you just, I mean, obviously Ignition Edge, but you also used, what was that? Red Zone,
Node-RED.
not
Node-RED.
Node-RED.
Node-RED. Yeah, sometimes I get those screwed up. How was that experience? Or was it the part of the project on using Node-RED?
Yeah, so initially I used Node-RED. So you can use Node-RED in a few different ways. It's a pretty versatile piece of software. You can use it to tie in any kind of PLC, any sort of edge device. It really has what they call modules or nodes or libraries, however you want to, whatever language you want to use there, built into it so that you can tie in a Siemens S7 right to it. Now, initially that's kind of how I used it, but that's not how I use it now. So
Okay.
now I use SQL commands and Python on a Raspberry Pi on the edge, and then my Node-RED is basically my IoT platform that I tie in everything else that I can't tie in that way, and then I run my logic up there for my MES functionality.
Okay.
So dashboarding and stuff. So it's done in Node-RED.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And so you would say, where do you think your engine, where are all your calculations being handled?
In Node-RED.
Node-RED. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're kind of leaving SQL kind of like just a database table, whatever the case is, just for storage of data. All of your complex math calculations or whatever the case is are all handled in the Node-RED. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Um, let's see what else. So tell us about like how did that first pilot project, obviously it's implemented, it's starting to collect some data, they're starting to see some value. What happened then? Did they start meeting around the machine? Did they start analyzing the data with you? I mean, how did that look?
Well, as soon as they saw what they could do, honestly, they came back with a million other things they wanted.
Yeah.
So it started talking. It basically went to me saying, "Slow down. We need to architect this right." But no, it's not sexy to architect. It's just not to bring in to build a database. That's not a good time for anybody. And so it was almost a little bit of a hang up there initially with them because you're not getting ROI immediately, and it's tough to even give them an ROI. And they lived in that world where they needed an ROI.
Right.
So we had to drive the ROI from basically me self-funding most of the first project. And then once we got that, then we started getting funding that wasn't from me. So it was, it's a little bit different way to do it, but it was a way that I needed to do to get them going, to show them, because once you show them, like I said, I showed them, then they're like, wait, can we do that? Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Tell me what you want to do. I'm telling you, there's an industrial revolution going on. And it's about this. So they don't even understand AI, like even the uses of it yet. And, so I have to help be their vision in that area.
Right. So you essentially solved the operator because they now have real time display about how they're doing and that kind of stuff. Managers are now seeing reason codes and whatnot. And now especially if you have a couple of machines that you've done this to, now you're starting to gather a lot more and helping out managers. Anything, did you focus anything on maintenance? Were they around for this project or at all, or did they have say a little bit?
Maintenance is not around for the project.
Okay.
Maintenance
All
is
right.
not on board. Maintenance is not on board. So
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was
in
actually
this
I
particular
was writing
case,
some
maintenance
questions
is not
down
on board.
here.
Operators, managers are on board. So I got brought in by the lead industrial engineer there. So it was a shop floor solution that got me started.
Okay.
So um, maintenance will put my Raspberry Pis on the TVs that are up high, and it usually takes 3 or 4 days to get on their schedule. So, but I got IT buy-in, which IT buy-in is usually hard to get, but I got IT buy-in. And once you get IT buy-in and OT buy-in, you're pretty much good to go.
Yeah, I mean, I have the word corporate up here, but really because it's generic enough, there could be you know, data scientists in there. They could be, preventative maintenance or just high level corporate individuals looking at overseeing several different sites. So you're saying that you did get some buy-in up here that obviously have a little bit more access to more capital budgets. Is that what
Mhm.
you found? Okay.
Yeah, we're moving up. So I did start at the shop floor, but we are moving up in that structure. This is a large company with
Okay.
it's a conglomerate, so
How did you, if you don't mind me asking, how did you sell it to these guys? Or how did they find out? How did they find out about this little pilot project that you guys started?
the corporate side. Well, when you walk out there and there's dashboards, it's
Okay.
know they saw it in action, and then they asked the questions.
Right. And usually what happens is they want several different, real-time dashboards and or reports. So is that kind of like what you found?
So that they all want their own dashboards. They all want them in their own ways.
Yeah.
But and once again, it's talking to them about like, yeah, this is possible, but if you actually build this outright, you can actually do your own dashboards.
Right.
If it's architected in the right way and you do the data in the right way, then you can do your own dashboards. You shouldn't be paying me to do your dashboards. You're the one that knows what you want on your dashboards. I made them their OEE dashboards. I made them like generalized dashboards by just knowing them. I know what they do, what they needed by talking to them. But the idea is that we get to the point that, essentially it's IT. IT is the one that's actually kind of picking up some of the heavy load here. I had
Right.
one particular person in IT that really stepped up.
So let's dive into this a little bit. So a lot of times what I find is they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know how they want the data. So it kind of helps that you kind of provide them a couple of screenshots or I'm sorry, dashboards and whatever. And then once they start working with it, of course, there's lots of education in that. And once they start working with it and knowing that it actually solves their problem, they'll come back to you and say, I want it done this way, or I want it done that way, or oh, do you have this data available? And of course, that adds a lot of the complexity to the whole system. So did you know how to, so it's an education part, and then there's, obviously, restrictions as far as the technical aspect of it. So did you run into any kind of those two issues?
Well,
And,
the education part, so the IT personnel would use a bunch of PHP. And so we had to, and it's not really, so we had to retrain them a bit. So in the IT, so it's going to happen. You have to retrain also Linux. They weren't real strong in Linux. So some of these solutions, you need to have at least a basic understanding of Linux, and obviously, the more you know, the better. And then working with, so we rolled back from the time series database, and now we're using a Postgres database, which is fine by me. It's what I'm used to using, so it actually made it way easier for me. I think I'm going to need to have one of those because we're going to bring in an IoT. Or a LoRaWAN network soon. So and that's going to produce a lot of data, and it's going to be more efficient to be in a time series format. But we just went with the Postgres database, and then everybody was happy.
Perfect. Yeah, we experienced the same thing. We're still using SQL, but we also have Postgres with timescale. Let's
Timescale
see.
DB.
Yep. So let's go into now. Where did the project go from there? So you've got. Let's see. So you've got all this kind of stuff in collecting into a Raspberry Pi up high, or did you actually purchase a server to get all
It's a
this stuff?
server. It's hosted by them.
Okay. Okay.
It's on a blade of some
Um,
sort.
and you did say that they actually not only did they have an office that they kind of look at some of the data, but also some screens out on the production floor.
Yeah, so the Grafana stuff is real-time dashboarding for them. So, and we can build real-time dashboarding in the Node-RED as well. So if they want to see something real-time in there is real-time call it dashboarding, but screens or interfaces where you can see the current job being ran on the machine and the operator and the part count and all that stuff. Also, real
Gotcha.
time, you can go in there and enter reason codes into the database. So if you want to be more granular, you can type as much as you want,
Now,
which I encourage them to do, because as we can get AI in here, AI can start to look at some of those things and even can tie together, a Spanish operator and an English operator that maybe identify the same thing as wrong, but capture in two entirely different ways, or even two same English operators can capture
right.
the same problem in two different ways, but AI can over time figure out they mean the same thing, so.
Now, did you have any problems with the machines that they were running? Did they have different speeds? Did they have different products that they were running through at different target rates?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they have a standard rate. So we have a standard rate on each part, and then we have a theoretical rate as well. So we use the
Okay.
standard and theoretical. So, because sometimes the standard rate is going to be the standard rate because there's something the bar feeder or the steel feeder or line feeder is too slow, but the machine could go faster, and you might want to be able to look at, hey, if we replace that, what can we do? But you don't want to ding the machine necessarily because the operator can't stack fast enough or something.
Gotcha. It was, were you able to change the target rates on a screen? Did the supervisor have access to changing those rates per
No,
product? Okay.
only the lead industrial engineer or IT or me has access to those.
Okay.
So
So
we lock them
then,
out of the enterprise flows essentially.
gotcha. So the machine will actually function or work just fine without your, Edge OE Raspberry Pi device. Was there buy-in to the operator being able to select and saying, "Hey, yes, I'm going to run right now at the moment," or was it automatic? Like as soon as his shift started, that was it. That's all you needed. There's not a trigger from the operator. You don't need a trigger for the operator to say that I'm now running. You just start, right?
No, I do take a trigger from the operator
Okay.
because they set up, and if their setup could start that. It's the machine was built in 1969. It doesn't even have a PLC. I'm not going to get. It's scary to even look in there.
Right. Right. Well, neat. So you did a couple. I mean, obviously, so you did the pilot project. You did a couple of projects. You started getting some feedback and buy-in. Where's the project now? Do you think in the steps, in the stages? Are they?
Start of scale.
Okay.
So I go through the standard connect, collect, store. So I've done that, databases are built. So analyze, visualize, so we got dashboards. I don't have a data broker yet. That's going in next. The data broker is just going to be necessary for really scaling. I'm
Okay.
basically using Node-RED in that aspect right now. I still put everything in MQTT because I know where we're going,
Okay.
but I don't have the actual broker in yet. We're
Okay.
deciding on whether we want a commercial solution or remain open source.
Now, I'm assuming that they don't have a SCADA system at this plant yet, or that they had one, but it's just old.
They don't have one.
Okay.
They have an ERP, but they
Okay.
don't have any sort of. They have no. Did you say SCADA? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, excuse me. No, they do not have a SCADA system. But
Okay.
they have one now. Essentially, it's an IoT
Okay.
software that does it for them. Does the same thing as SCADA does. It's just more capable.
Okay. So yeah, we're talking about a plant that barely has any PLCs. Is that, did I get you right?
Standalone
Okay.
PLCs.
Okay. And then, a lot of times, there's networking issues and all kinds of stuff. Did you start having to, or is this all over Wi-Fi, or how did you get everything to connect?
Well, yeah. So initially it was Wi-Fi, but they handle a lot of steel. So I was having problems with some of the signals and stuff, and we just went ahead and wired it in, so we didn't have to worry about that anymore. Now that's why I was looking at the LoRaWAN network, because we're gonna have a little better penetration and coverage with that. Might be a good use case, and so we could. I've messed with that in agriculture a little bit, so might try that technology.
Okay. So, tell me about a little bit more about how, so you're starting to gather data, and was there ever a team that kind of like did it kind of like a little powwow or had some kind of meeting with some of your data that was just produced? Is there ever a time like how did you know which machine to focus on, or how did they know? And then when they did focus on it, what do you think they did? Did they look at the
Which
data?
which machine to focus on?
Yeah.
Like they were having problems. Like if we drilled down into OEE, what the issues were.
Right, right. So say you've got several different machines on a line. How do they focus on which one was causing the most biggest issues? And then
Well, so we have area dashboard, so we
okay,
consider that an area. So press area. So if they were to go below, their OEE number it's not high. But if they were to go below a certain amount, then they could drill down and look at it by line. So you could drill down and look at line. Okay, why is this one bad? Okay, part starved, you got no
Right.
steel there or something, so yeah, it gives them, I mean, it's not big enough to where you wouldn't be able to identify that if you were standing in the area, but we're trying to get away from people having to stand in the area and look at that.
Gotcha. Any information or integration with your ERP system for orders or anything like that?
Yeah, so we're pulling work orders from the ERP and feeding them in. We haven't done scheduling yet, but we do want to try to look at scheduling from the ERP. And then we're doing RM, so it's like I don't know what it actually stands for, but it's like remediating the inventory, like changing inventory counts and stuff like that.
Okay.
So now we know, instead of guessing, we can actually go in the ERP, and well, it's a manual process right now. So you get a dashboard, you get your ERP up right next to it, but all it is a simple flipping of the switch when we decide we're ready to make that. We just want to make sure we look at it for a couple months and make sure nothing weird's going to happen before we automate that.
Good.
And
Yeah.
of course we bound it and stuff, but abundance of caution.
Yeah, I often see that they coexist right next to each other, and then there's a manual operation at some point. But I think the main goal I see a lot of corporations doing is that at some point they'll have the integration with an ERP system. That way they can have one centralized master, say all the target rates or the runs, yeah, target run rates and that kind of stuff. They can have that localized because I see those in two different spots right now at the moment. That they have somebody has to synchronize anyway. Are you collecting any kind of data from like which users on what machine at all?
Yep. So the supervisor logs in the user now and the jobs on the machine
Okay,
before the
okay,
start of the shift.
okay.
So the machine knows user, job number, part number it's running, operator that's on it. I think that's the main piece of information we collect from it.
Yeah, I, I don't. I mean, I got to feel bad for the operator, but at some point, because we try to set it up to where he logs in and that way we can actually capture if that person's worse than the other shift or that kind of stuff, whatever. So, but it gets really political once that happens.
I can imagine they're already getting a little nervous about me being around there. I don't turn my back to some of them.
Yeah, ultimately, I would like to see if there was, and I think it's going to be a little bit different for every customer, but somehow attaching, throughput or the performance of OE, some type of KPI that they can use to, incentivize some type of performance package or a bonus at the end of the month or whatever the case is. I know that there's going to be issues as far as what if happens if all of a sudden first shift has a lot of delayed maintenance and then just shoves all that maintenance to second shift, and it's not necessarily the second person's shift's fault. So having to figure out how to, the right KPI to use to incentivize the employee or the operator to actually, actually want it. Because what I've seen in the past is if the plant doesn't have a buy-in, it doesn't work. No OE system seems like it works without the buy-in of the plant itself, all the staff members. So you have to give that staff members or the staff some type of incentive to reason why. And it's just not enough. I don't think it's good enough just to threaten them if you don't do this or if you don't fill out this OE information that you'll get fired. I think you just get bad data. So anyway, it'd be kind of curious to see what your plant will do at that point.
Well, I'm hoping that we can eliminate getting any data from the operator. That's really ultimately my goal, is to make it easier for them. They can just operate the machine. They don't want to enter the data. So
Right.
like I said, we want to go to vision systems and do quality right there. I mean, vision systems are coming so far so fast that I imagine that before long, a vision system can probably point it at your machine, can probably even tell you what problem you're having. So
Right.
I think that's where we're heading with that. Now, I'm not trying to blame this on the operators or say it's the operator's fault. It's difficult. This is a difficult job. This is a difficult environment, and they're not making a lot of money. They're coming to work for their 8 hours and they're going home. It's a job for them. So we just we need better data.
Right. And then,
It's not from the operators.
if I was an operator, I know that I would. I used to work at an adhesive plant where we had to deal with glue, and I would want all the data that I could to show that maintenance wasn't doing their job because cleaning that machine was an awful experience. So, yeah, that's one of the incentives I think I would have is being able to hopefully not finger point, but mostly just going to take this information to be able to say and say, hey, we just need more time for this machine to be down for maintenance reasons, and maybe that would prove it.
Or like if you might find one operator that's outperforming another, it might not be because they're not working hard. It might be they're just setting it up different. Maybe it's
Right.
just a quick training deal. You know, let's look at that. Let's look at why these things are performing different.
Right.
And honestly, it's not really even the operator that often. But I mean, the outliers are obvious when you look at them, and I'm talking about good ones. Like there are clearly very good operators, and 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 the shops know this already. You know, it
Right.
just gives them data points to you know help them.
Well, on the technical side, are you planning on more of a, ISA 95 part two, to try to get this more, are you looking at multiple sites or just one site?
So I built it up for multiple sites. So
Okay.
it's set up for multiple sites. So it's an enterprise. I am using this enterprise plant, enterprise site area line cell. I use site, but that's fine. And line
Okay.
cell, yeah, it's the same.
Perfect. Okay.
Or edge. Sometimes I call the last one edge.
Right.
You know.
Um, well, Johnny, do you have any questions about some of this stuff?
Not really. Y'all kind of went over them.
Okay. I mean, this is probably a good time. I mean, Tony, you tell me, is there anything else that you would like to talk about as far as MES? Because otherwise we can jump into the panels.
Yeah, we can talk about we can move on to panels.
Okay. So tell me about, how'd you get involved with building the panels?
So my prior life, I was a systems engineer with a defense contractors. My degree is computer programming, and then I was a member of the Kansas Air National Guard, and then assigned to a cyber protection team as a cyber warfare operator. And then I went through cyber school and learned about industrial control systems. So that was my first introduction, was actually Air Force Cyber School, learning how to hack and defend industrial control systems.
Okay.
And then once I found out that this is how the world actually is automated, it just, I was off and running at that point. I was signing up for college classes to learn how to program PLCs on my own to do all this because I was just so fascinated by it. And then
What what kind of PLCs did you get to touch?
Alan Bradley is what I
Okay.
learned on in school. So I took a PLC 1 and 2 class, and then I programmed a Schneider PLC a few times, and then some Click PLCs, and then moved on to and small stuff. Like I'm not an automation engineer like that, but I can modify code and stuff and do stuff like that. So that's kind of my introduction. My best friend was an industrial electrician, so we would build these big giant control panels in my garage on the weekends, and made great money doing it. A couple of guys just drinking beers and climbing around panels and wiring. And we would take two panels at the same time if they weren't too big, and he would do one. I would just copy his work with the wiring, and and then do the little bit of PLC programming, pop them in there, deliver them on Monday, and everybody was happy. I go back to my regular job. So that's kind of
Perfect.
a weird way to get into it, but side hustle.
So, which PLC, Allen Bradley PLC, did you guys work on? Were you guys on the old Slick 500s or Micrologics, or was it?
Micrologic stuff.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So and then I moved on these click things. So little cheap little PLCs, they run pretty well too.
right. No, no compact logics or control logics.
Nope. We basically had, we what they say is we danced to one song. So we had our software that we had that we could work with.
Right.
You know how Allen Bradley is with their software. You have one version and it doesn't work for any other version.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. I started with that as well. I started with Ars Logix 500 and fell in love with it. I did a lot with it, but eventually I found, obviously Ars Logix 5000, and it's clear as day that there's a lot more organization and tag, organization that you have there. So it's just a lot more powerful. You'll once you switch over, you'll kind of regret going back.
well, I've actually gotten really into the Groove PLCs.
Okay.
So they have Node-RED natively on them. You can write Python on them. They do MQTT out of the box. They're expensive, so there's a downside there. But also, what Arduino's coming out with or has a PLC out that's you can write C code, structured text, ladder logic, and ties into their ecosystem. So that's going to be pretty exciting for me when I get my hands on one of those.
Nice.
So what's expensive for a processor to you? Like, what do you say that a processor is too expensive?
It depends on what you're processing, but
Well, I'm talking about like you said a Click PLC is kind of expensive. Like,
no, Click is reasonable.
Okay.
I'd say the Allen Bradley brands or Schneider, or Siemens S7s. I mean, to me, for what they do, they're expensive. But I'm coming from a different world, so
Well,
and I'm quick to move away from a PLC. I'll do these microcontrollers. I'll do an Arduino microcontroller with C on it before I'll do a PLC. But that's because I'm comfortable with that.
so what's
So,
your thoughts on the PLCs that are coming with Linux native on them?
well, I love it. I'm Linux certified. I'm good with Linux. So if you run operating systems, though, you're inherently going to be less reliable, even with Linux, even with Unix. So and you can't get really much more reliable than ladder logic or embedded C or assembly if you write that, COBOL if you're still alive. So what's nice about that now is you can actually put that in ChatGPT and find out what that code actually does.
Oh, wow. Never thought about that.
Hey, Brandon, by
man,
the way, I didn't notice that you put the RIP behind Bedrock till just now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We had to do that at, yep. Maybe we did that with Brian. I can't remember.
Sorry.
So, you said you dabbled a little bit with the Modicons as well.
Yeah, I can't even remember what PLC that was. I just remember I worked in Sew Machine and I paid $1,000 for that license.
Probably
And I modified some fan speeds and stuff for a customer and some fairly straightforward stuff. Like I said, this is the PLCs. Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of time in them, but I'm quick to move away. And I like Linux, so I'll even put a Raspberry Pi at the edge if it works. But like an example, a problem I was having with running Python script is my database connections. If the press strike was happening too fast, the code wouldn't be ready in time. That's not going to happen with the PLC.
Right.
So depends on what you're doing. Depends on what you're doing. I wouldn't take on a job that was process control like this. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't daisy chain a bunch of Siemens PLCs. It's not my wheelhouse. Mine is going to be the more modern architectures. And this stuff is still useful in nuclear and oil and gas and petrochemical. It's still there and it's still good. It's so don't tear all your stuff out and throw it away. It's it's usable. It's just not mine. Not the way that I do it.
Right. Yeah. Any messing around with the PLC Next yet? You
No.
probably haven't. Okay.
Mm-mm.
You probably would really like it. It gives you the real-time PLC function and separate processor to run your Linux functions and things of that nature.
Neat. But yeah, very cool.
But Allen Bradley's got their version of the Compact Logics with Windows 10 IoT on it. I know Snyder has a few versions of that as well. Wago, they're doing it, and I think they're all doing it now because they all see the need of having that edge computer.
Yeah.
That the operator or the higher end maintenance guys can dabble with and troubleshoot and fix in the middle.
But it's just getting so hard to even find people that can even work on these things anymore. Whereas modern technologies are much easier to work with than some of this. Just like how COBOL programmers aren't alive anymore. Most of them are retired at this point. It would be idiotic to program something in that. You're gonna have no support, and support you're gonna get is gonna be very expensive. But like I said, Groove makes a great PLC. I've seen them in a lot of places. They're good. They're modern. So I think everybody should be moving to that. I mean, the touchscreen's right on them, right out of the box. You plug them in. You can connect them to the Wi-Fi right away. I mean, you can pull that thing out of the box and probably get it running in like 20 minutes. And that's something you just can't accomplish with some of these other brands.
Yep. So back to panel building. Let's talk about that. Any VFDs and that kind of stuff, or was it just did you use any kind of like point IO or remote IO?
Yeah, so we had VFDs and motor starters and all that stuff. Like I said, though, Matt was the industrial electrician at the time, so he's actually the one that knew all that stuff. It wasn't really until Industry 4.0 took off that I could move, because I was in industrial cybersecurity before this, that once Industry 4.0 took off, then my skills from system engineering crossed over much better than me going in and learning how to build a SCADA network with, Modbus, or something like that. I understand it from a cybersecurity level of why it's insecure, because, no encryption, passwords in plain text, and, I understand all that. But at the engineering level, I don't understand the PLCs like I understand building a proper modern network. I mean, it's just like building a enterprise network. It's the same thing, same technologies. The cybersecurity is the same cybersecurity once you get to a certain point. Once you get away from the edge, whether you put it in MQTT or OPC UA or OPC DA or whatever protocol you put it in, once you get it in something modern out of that Profibus, Profinet stuff. Once you get something modern, it's all modern. So my goal is to get it modern right away. As soon as I can, I get it modern, normal, and contextualized. So I get my data, so I put as much context as I can at the edge, and I push it into the namespace.
And then I mean, obviously the standard interface for getting it up to your OE engine, which is your Node-RED. That way, so every single time you add a machine, it's exactly the same signals and that kind of stuff, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is kind of interesting, Johnny. Just Tony's different, him coming from the top down and touching, panels and that kind of stuff. So it's Tony, your experience is kind of unique for us because I think I started as an electrician and then built panels, and then I slowly worked up to programming, and now I push paper. But
Those podcasts.
well, that's here, yeah. So it's very interesting to me with what the next generation is going to be doing with trying to capture this data and understanding it, that kind of stuff. I really do like that you've touched on the floor and gotten some experience there. Yeah, it's very fascinating to see. Also, talk to anybody, any kind of individual that's actually done kind of like some MES type of projects, because there's a small group.
It's not easy.
Not all,
it's not easy.
not all, yeah. And I would say that not every MES guy is, committed to, just be able to speak and, be able to describe a lot of the complex issues, because you're dealing with a lot, like we just talked about in the pod, a few minutes ago. You're trying to satisfy a lot of different consumers. And there's just doesn't seem like this is a product that can solve everybody's problems. It's just you try your best and you kind of move forward, and it's kind of clunky. I've often find that you give it to them, you wait, and you'll get some feedback. You give it back to them, and you'll get some more feedback. So it never ends, which is kind of unusual. So anyway,
it's pretty much standard software development lifecycle. Moving away from the waterfall where you're going to get this in this amount of time, and it's 1 year and it's $1.2 million. It's like, here's this. Okay, do you like it? No. Okay, let's change it. And then next month you get another broken piece of software, but hopefully the month prior is fixed. So that's more what we're used to getting. That's how you get your value out of it much sooner.
Right. What also I find that your experience is kind of interesting is because you probably did it with barely any budget. Now you could have had a customer that had lots of cash and you could have thrown lots of money at it and built that. But now that you've done it cheaper, the next couple of projects, you can do different things based on where the customer's budget is. So that is a unique kind of situation or a benefit, because not every customer's got that kind of cash that they're willing to throw at it.
It's built modular, just like we have apps on our phone. So right. if they want to go to MES, it's completely different. It's already halfway configured right, because the structure's right. So it's much easier to bring that software in. You can even bring it in parallel and just start pointing it at the namespace and pulling in the data. You can bring in different types of databases. You can bring in a different ERP. It's just a modular way to do it. Instead of this, you buy one and they do the whole stack, the automation stack from the shop floor to the cloud. Then your data is, siloed and you don't own it, and it just makes it difficult.
Right. Any, obviously you're on, the Discord server, and you've obviously watched a lot of the Walker Reynolds videos and that kind of stuff. Is there any kind of suggestion or kind of need for more supply chain information, or in this customer site that you're dealing with right now? Is there, suppliers that need some data, do you think?
So this particular customer has not asked about
okay.
supplier data, but I do understand digital supply chain and the importance of it, and how this unlocks even the ability to do that. And your ability to tie in your data structures is going to be probably one of the most valuable things that your business will have to offer within the next few years. Just the data on how you produce, what you produce, if you're producing, all that stuff is going to be extremely useful. And so I'm hoping that they see that these manufacturers, and I live in Wichita, so the Midwest. You got Midwest and you got manufacturing, so they're slow to move sometimes. They've always done it this way, and they want to keep doing it this way. And you go in there and you say words they don't even understand. They're waiting to retire. Those sort of things, you won't get a lot of buy-in. So, if I was in Dallas or something, or in Houston, I'm sure I'd have a lot more movement in that area. But I think, but we have aircraft manufacturing here, and so and Wichita is looking to modernize. I see the importance of it. So I'm just trying to help these manufacturers here the best I can.
I don't know. What's your take on that, Johnny? Do you think that Dallas?
No,
um,
is that where you live, Johnny?
Well, that's where Brant lives.
Oh yeah.
So I'm south of Dallas. I'm in between Austin and there. So
Well,
I'm in the
it's on
Waco area.
I-35 corridor, right?
Oh yeah.
I would not count Wichita out compared to Dallas. I think every manufacturing plant has has an old school mentality. So things are slow, and things
Well,
are.
we still have pretty good access to fairly inexpensive labor, but I think that's going to change because we got microchip plants coming in here, and well, now we got Boeing problems again, so we'll see. Boeing kind of drives this town, so they don't block you for my comment.
We'll just cut that out.
Yeah.
It'll just be like his sentences.
Hey,
What?
Spirit, call me if you need some QA.
Yeah, yeah, because I just find it what I've seen at the plants in the Dallas location is just a struggle with keeping consistent operators that are educated and that know the machine very well. So we're always going to have these problems, and so you know, the future I would like to think that we'll be able to figure these problems out a little bit better, and obviously it's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens with our issues with China and our manufacturing, a lot of our manufacturing over there, and for us to be able to pull some of that manufacturing back. So anyway,
I'm banking on that one.
Well,
So
with all the
our supply chain is going to move from China to the south of Mexico, it looks like. So, or here. I mean, that's the only other place we can really get that labor at that rate, or the Philippines. But that's high level manufacturing. But that's what it's looking like.
yep.